You want to start with the end goal in mind, but always remain flexible. And you really want to have a thorough understanding of your why. Why do you want to become a pilot? You really need to understand that, and most importantly, believe in that as you believe in yourself. Because that's really what's going to help you get through the journey. Because it's not a matter of if, but when. Things are going to start to get difficult and challenging. And when adversity sets in, if you don't really have a why, it can be real easy for you to quit. This is why it's important for you to figure this out on day one. Why do you want to become a pilot? What is your end goal? For example, let's give some examples. Some examples can be your end goal is you want to fly for fun. That's beautiful. That's one thing about your why. It doesn't have to be this deep philosophical thing as to why you want to become a pilot. It can be something just as simple as you want to incorporate more fun into your life. Your way of incorporating more fun into your life is by becoming a pilot. You want to fly and swing and bang that thing and have a lot of fun in the sky. That is a very good why. You want to make sure you believe in that why, you stick to that why, and if adversity starts to set in, you understand why you're going through the process. This is going to be your avenue to having more fun with your life. Maybe your end goal is you want to eventually become a captain at an airline. Great end goal to have. You're starting with the end in mind. Maybe you want to be a corporate jet pilot. Maybe you want to fly for the military. You want to have an end goal in mind on day one. But here's the most key to this. You want to remain flexible, because in the beginning of your journey, you have a very microcosm knowledge of aviation as a whole. You're just entering this world. This whole new world is new to you. So you may only understand 3 or 4 handful of things that you can do with your pilot journey. But then as you start to explore more, as you start to get more ratings, as you start to do more things, other avenues start to open up for you. And you start to realize that there's a lot more out there for you based on when you had this very narrow and limited view of what was available and what was possible. That's why it's key to remain flexible. You don't want to just have a dead being, okay, I'm going to be an airline pilot and I'm going to be an airline captain. Great. But then you got so much tunnel vision that as you start going through the process and going through the journey, you're ignoring all these other opportunities that are being thrown at you and things that you could have possibly enjoyed and maybe went over into an area and did something even more exciting. You decided and declined on that because you were looking on tunnel vision and you weren't flexible enough. You want to be flexible enough at every level and at every stage to be able to pivot, particularly if it's something that you're interested in and something that benefits you. So start with the end goal in mind, but always remain flexible and understand your why. This is the number one tip that's going to help you, and some of the best advice ever for all new student pilots. Tip number 2, never compare yourself to others, only to your own prior performance. That's the only comparison you should be making. Are you improving now? Are you better now than you were yesterday? Are you a better pilot now than you were last week, last month, etc.? That's the measuring stick that you want to use as you're going throughout your pilot journey. As you enter aviation, you're going to be meeting and surrounded by a lot of new people with all sorts of abilities and talents and different levels and different backgrounds and different levels of experience. You never want to make the mistake of comparing yourself to others. And it's a habit that a lot of people have, particularly in the beginning, thinking, well, oh, this person has X amount of hours and they're already soloing or they're already doing this part, then you should be doing it as well. You're on your own journey. Certain elements and certain aspects of flying may come easy for you. Other elements may be a lot more challenging, and it may be the reverse for someone else. This is why you never want to compare yourself to anyone. Think about and worry about your own journey and make sure you're constantly progressing. Only compare yourself to your own prior performance, and this will help you stay focused, stay on your own path, and also make sure you're constantly progressing. You don't worry about anyone else's progression scale and their curve. Worry about your own, and everything will be fine and it'll work out in your favor. And most importantly, you won't be a victim of stealing your own joy and your own excitement simply because you spend so much time comparing yourself to others instead of enjoying your own milestones. If you soloed at X, if you cross country at X, if you got your license at X, good for you. Long as you are progressing along the way and making your learning experience enjoyable. Enjoy the process and don't be a victim of comparison. Tip number 3, número 3, it's okay to be discouraged, just don't quit. It's going to get hard. It's going to get difficult. Just think about this. You're doing something that only a small percentage of the world population can do. You're learning to fly an airplane. Only a small percentage of the world's population even has this ability and skill. And that's something that you're embarking on your journey and learning how to do. Of course, it's going to be hard. Of course, it's going to be challenging. Of course, you're going to get discouraged at some point. It's okay to be discouraged. Just don't quit. And you can already be thinking ahead of yourself and having yourself a strategy and a plan for when you do get discouraged. If you do get discouraged, what is your plan? Think ahead of what are you going to do. Are you going to revisit maybe some of your ground material? Do you have a friend or maybe a mentor or maybe a progression buddy that you can consult with and someone that can help you get through the rough patches? Have you built up a unique and special kind of relationship with your flight instructor? Are there free and fun videos somewhere on the internet? On this channel, baby, over 100 of them things that you can refer to and reference to kind of get you some excitement back into what you're doing. Hey, do any and everything and have yourself a discouragement strategy. Whenever you get discouraged, you refer and you rely on that strategy to get you back on track. It's okay to be discouraged. It's not okay to stay discouraged. And it's not okay to quit, particularly if this is a goal that you know is for you, just because adversity set in. It's okay to be discouraged. It's just not okay to quit. Numero cuatro, tip number 4 for some of the best advice ever for student pilots. Here's the very fun part of the level that you are in right now as a student pilot. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. You should be making as many mistakes as possible at this level. And I'm gonna give you the reason why. You have a built-in safety net with your instructor flying right next to you. So you should have all the courage to go out and try and push forward in confidence to perform a lot of the maneuvers that you're being asked to do because you have a safety net there. Don't be afraid to make mistakes. Don't be afraid to make mistakes on comms, on the radios. Don't be afraid to make mistakes inside the aircraft with your flying. This is how you're going to get better. Mistakes are commonplace at pretty much every level of being a pilot. There's no such thing as a perfect pilot who doesn't make mistakes. But if you're afraid to make mistakes, then it's going to slow down your learning process. And at the student pilot level, you shouldn't be afraid because you have that safety net there. Do not be afraid to make mistakes. Mistakes is part of the growing process. That is how you learn. Learn from your mistakes and try not to make the same mistakes twice. If you do that, you'll be just fine. You're learning from each and every mistake you're making, but you have the confidence to perform and to execute what you're being asked and perform to execute. Don't be so worried about trying to impress your instructor by doing everything perfectly. Learn to impress yourself by not being afraid to make mistakes. That's what's going to get you far in this game. Hey, big tip number 5, numero 5 of some of the best advice ever for student pilots. Make it a point to make your entire student pilot journey about laying down a great foundation of fundamental flying. That's what it's all about in the beginning. You want to make sure you master the fundamentals of flying. It's real easy to get caught up in a lot of the hype and a lot of the tricks and a lot of the fun stuff that you may see people doing. You may have all these crazy people all over social media. We swinging and banging that thing. Hey, we in ground effect, baby. Having fun, doing all kinds of fun stuff. And that's all nice and cool. But in the beginning, you want to worry about, of course, laying the foundation, laying down the fundamentals of everything that's happening, because that's going to help you in the long run. Think about it in terms of sports analogy. If you were to try to learn to play basketball and you didn't know how to play basketball at all, going out and trying to do a fancy dunk when you really don't know anything can be very difficult and very challenging to do. Doing some crazy off-balance shot, but if you work on the fundamentals first, you got your handles down, your dribbling is on point, you can make a nice free throw consistently, boom, layups, your basic shots. If you start mastering the fundamentals, play sound defense, then the next thing you know, even when the level of game starts to go up a little bit, you can start folding in the trick shots and all the fun stuff because you've mastered the fundamentals. The fundamentals are sound. You want to approach flying in the same exact aspect. You want to lay down the fundamentals of flying and have that be down packed And in a good way, that's what you're laying that foundation first, and then you can build that house. Once you lay that foundation and that cement is nice and hard, now you can start building that mansion, baby. That $1 million worth of game mansion that you want to build in terms of the flying empire that you're building for yourself and your skill set. That mansion that you want, it has to be laid on a nice foundation, the fundamentals of flying. That's all you should be focusing on in the very beginning. Focus on all the fundamentals, and the fun stuff can come later. Hey, numero seis, big tip number 6. Boom! Big 6 to the board, like we playing dominoes in this thing one time. Hey, you want to make sure no jerking. Let the plane do the working. This is something that even on your very first flight, your discovery flight, when you're allowed and the instructor tells you your controls and gives you an opportunity, my controls, and you can take grip of the airplane and touch the controls, do it very softly and gentle. This is going to give you and implant inside of you a certain habit that you want to maintain throughout your entire pilot journey. An airplane was meant to fly. It flies itself, baby. All you doing is controlling the energy. The energy can't be created and it can't be destroyed. It can only be transferred. And that's all you're simply doing when you're taking off and you're landing and you're flying. You're transferring the energy of the plane. And it doesn't take you the strong arm to do that. No need to have a death grip on the yoke at any point to do this. It was designed to fly. It wants to fly. So all you have to do is gently control the airplane. So practice this on your very first flight. That way you're already ingraining in your mind the habit of being gentle on the controls. No jerking. Let the plane do the working. 7 with the back door, little Joe. Hey, tip number 7. One time for your mind, some of the best advice ever for student pilots. Never underestimate the ground game. Just like the game of football, it's a passing lead, but that ground game can win you a lot of games. You want to make sure that you level up and you focus in on the ground of aviation. Learning as much as you can on the ground. The more you learn on the ground, the cheaper it is to fly. If you want your flying time to be less, if you want to take less flights to learn things, learn as much as you can on the ground. And it's going to be beneficial and better for you in the long run. So don't let the ground be something that's in the background because you're so excited to be in the aircraft that you ignore the ground. So you maybe ignore the rig, you ignore a lot of the things and you push them off until it's time for the check ride. You want to reverse that. Well, you focused on all that stuff in the beginning. You got that out the way. That written, been done that. That ground, I stayed ahead of the game on that thing. So when it's time for the check ride, never underestimate the power of the ground game. One time. Hey, the great number 8. Tip number 8 for all student pilots when we talk about some of the best advice. Straight, no chaser. Check this out. Overestimate your calculations. Underestimate your ability. Overestimate your calculations, underestimate your abilities. Whenever you're going flying, you're going to have to do a variety of different calculations. One of them being, say for example, how much fuel should you carry for this trip? You always want to overestimate your calculations. When you're doing weight and balance, you always want to overestimate those calculations. You never want to come in under and you actually needed more than where you are. You want to overestimate, overcompensate for that so you always remain safe. But you want to underestimate your abilities. You never want to look at something and think to yourself, I can do that. You always want to have a sense of reserve about yourself and a sense of check about yourself, checking yourself as a pilot in command to underestimate your ability. Being overly confident in your abilities can put you in a bad place. Overestimate your calculations. Underestimate your abilities. Surprise yourself when you land that thing all nice and soft, baby. Hey! Butter. Tip number 9, altitude is your lifeline. Always be working with more than enough altitude. Again, back to number 8 in those calculations, we always want to overestimate those calculations. With altitude, it's the same thing. If you were planning a flight plan and you could have easily done it at one altitude, but then you think to yourself, you're going to put another layer of altitude on top of that, another 1,000 or maybe 2,000 feet just for insurance, because it can be flown safely in that capacity, then do so. Altitude is your lifetime. If you're performing maneuvers, again, altitude is your lifeline. line. Make sure you always working with enough altitude. If a mistake is made up high, it can be corrected before anything bad happens in most cases. But if a mistake is made down low, then it can become real serious real fast. And you don't want that real bad. Big tip number 10, you want to make sure you always are open to learning any and everything, and you never want to stop learning. Never do the bare minimum when it comes to learning. Do just enough so you can pass the written test at the right percentage. That's not good. Do just enough so you can slip past the check ride. That's not good. You never know when some piece of information or something that you kind of skipped over, now your life depends on it because you're in a certain situation in the cockpit where you need to know that information for survival. That's the kind of game that you playing when you do that. So never just learn the bare minimum just to get by. That's why you want to try to make sure you try to develop a passion for what you're doing, and a passion for flying, and a passion for aviation. If in it for nothing else, survival. You don't want I skipped past that piece of information. I barely understood that. That went in one ear. I jotted it down just so I can pass the test. Then it went out the other ear. But then now all of a sudden, 3 months later, 6 months later, a year later, you need that piece of information to help save your life. Never just learn the bare minimum. Open yourself up to absorb and learn each and everything about every aspect of flying. Again, goes back to laying down that foundation, the fundamentals of flying. Make sure you lay that thing down nice and tough like. So when you get ready to build that flying mansion on top of that foundation, everything is going to be beautiful, baby. Hey, as a great resource, you can always come back and watch the videos on this channel to keep the information fresh in your mind and to keep everything going as you go throughout the process. We all need refreshers from time to time. That's all part of flying. But these are the kind of tools that we need. Tools like this channel where you can get that information fed to you fun and free. So never take for granted what you got before you. All you got to do is press play, baby. Hey, tip number 11, going around isn't a sign of weakness. It's a sign of strength, and it's a sign of someone who's pilot in command. Never be afraid to call a go around. Begin executing the go around immediately and do what you have to do if it doesn't feel right to you. Don't look at this as any sign of your inability to perform and execute and do it. Look at it as a sign of strength, as you're in control of the aircraft and you made the decision making and being in control and being ahead of the aircraft. All valuable components of being pilot in command. This is the way you want to approach all go arounds. If you're ever unsure about anything, just go around. Hey, tip number 12. You want to hang around the airport as much as possible. It doesn't cost you anything to just hang around the airport, but you'll be very surprised at how much you actually learn simply by observing others. Always remember, there are a variety of different ways to learn things and absorb information. One is obviously you being an active participant, which you're naturally going to be because you're going to be a student pilot. But on those days where you don't have a lesson, or maybe it's before your lesson or after your lesson, you just hanging around and observing others is a tremendous opportunity for you to learn. Everyone is in unique situations, so you observing someone else in another situation and maybe seeing the instruction that they've been given is going to help you. Just hanging around and being in the environment helps you absorb information. And again, it's free. It doesn't cost you anything. It's a great way to learn. You want to learn through all avenues, not just what you're being told to do, but observing what others are doing, some of the good things they're doing and some of the mistakes they're making as well. A wise person doesn't just learn from their own mistakes. They learn from the mistakes of others. Hey, lucky number 13, tip number 13. Always be proactive in your pilot journey and proactive in your learning experience. Never take a back seat and passively think that, okay, the instructor is going to tell me everything I need to know. Remember, this is your pilot journey. You want to be active. You want to be out there proactively learning things from a variety of different sources and then verifying that information with your instructor so you are in line and know exactly what you need to do to get through the process. But you never want to take a back seat and think that someone else is going to tell me everything that I need to know. Always be proactive throughout your entire learning experience and your entire journey as a pilot. not just at the student pilot level, but as you begin to just go through life. Remain proactive in your learning. Tip number 14, you want to be consistent throughout your flight journey. Now, consistency means something different to everyone as you go through your aviation journey. For one person, that may be flying twice a week. For another person, that may be flying 4 times a week. You got to find out what consistency works best for your lifestyle and then incorporate that consistency, but most importantly, stick to it. It's like going to the gym. If you said to yourself, I'm going to go to the gym 3 days a week, Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, then you don't miss. So you can get them gains, baby. You don't miss. You just keep going and you stay on that schedule. You want to do the same exact thing with flying. The only thing that's going to deviate and kind of where you have to make an audible call is if weather kind of takes its toll, particularly in the very beginning stages of your flying, and you have to do something else. But one of the keys to consistency also too, it's not just consistency with your flight lessons. It's consistency with just being exposed to aviation. You can't go flying every day or 4 times a week or 2 times or 3 times a week or whatever it may be. You only can fly twice a week or once a week, whatever it may be. But what you can do is you can expose yourself to learning something about aviation and reading about aviation and watching videos on this channel about aviation and various other kind of resources that you have at your disposal. You can do that every day, and that will make you consistent. That's how you can incorporate that ground game without being overwhelmed by it. If you just dedicate, hey, for an hour every day, for 30 minutes every day, I do something aviation related. It may not be, I can't go on a flight 4 days a week, but what I can do is expose myself to aviation every day. And you should be doing that. And that consistency is going to help you remember things a lot more clearly, a lot faster. It's going to expedite your entire learning process. And that's part of being proactive, baby. Hey, tip number 15, baby. Big 1-5. You know what I'm talking about? One time. And here's something you want to do with your life. And this life tip is going to transfer over to aviation. You want to do everything that you can to always keep things neat, clean, and in order. You want to keep your home neat, clean, and in order. You want to keep your car neat, clean, and in order. And then that's going to transfer over to you keeping the cockpit neat, clean, and in order. This thing smelling good, baby. Smelling like Tom Ford ombre leather in that thing. Hey, one time. And the reason why you're doing this, it's not just because it sounds good or because everything looks good because it's clean and in order. It's actually a survival tactic. And here's how it's a survival tactic, particularly when you're in the sky. If you're flying around and you're asked, of course, to write some information down, simple information, but then you're scrambling around looking for a pen. This is no good. Where are my eyes? My eyes need to be out on that horizon, baby, looking at them instruments, doing what I do. They can't be down scrambling simply because your area wasn't neat and clean enough where you can just grab a pen from your pocket and you know exactly where it is and you don't have to take your eyes off of anything. Simple little thing. It could be a checklist that you're looking for that's just misplaced and out of order. It can be any airport diagram. It can be anything that you're searching for, that you're looking for. But if things are in order and you know exactly where everything is, that is survival tactics are going to make a lot less stressful for you, for number one, and you're never going to be fishing for anything. Could you imagine just fumbling around fishing for something, particularly, let's just say you're on a night flight and you're fumbling around fishing for the basic little things that if you would have had a little bit of cleanliness and order and neatness about yourself in the cockpit, all that could have been a non-issue. Hey, tip number 16, the sweet 16 in that thing. Hey, you want to make sure that you set practical goals for yourself. Oftentimes, particularly if you're incredibly ambitious and you got that fire burning inside you, you're passionate about something, you may think to yourself like, yeah, I'm gonna get my pilot's license in 2 days, in 3 days, or I only need this many hours, I'm gonna knock that out in no time. And it rarely ever goes that way. So you want to make sure that you're setting practical goals and expectations for yourself. If you were to do things, expeditiously, that's great. But more than likely, it's not going to happen that way. So you make sure always want, and you don't want to get discouraged just because it didn't happen that way. That's the game that you're playing if you set these very unrealistic kind of goals for yourself. Look at research, do your research and see what some of these national averages are for a lot of these goals and where people are in their pilot journey. And then make sure you know what your learning ability is, and also to make sure you're setting your goals that are practical based on that. Now you've done something real solid versus you just spitballing and thinking that you're going to do this thing, this massive goal that you have, and you're going to knock it out like this. And then when it doesn't happen, you have a likelihood to become discouraged. And sometimes it may or may not be happening for you, not because of your ability. It can be anything. Life could have gotten away. We all have lives outside of aviation. Things could have happened that it could have deterred you. But now, because you didn't achieve this short, really extreme goal that you had, now all of a sudden you're discouraged and you want to quit. It happens all the time. Do not do this. Set practical goals. Tip number 17. Network as much as possible and be genuine in your interactions with people as you're getting to know them. Again, you're not doing this to compare yourself to anyone, but what you are doing is you're entering a whole new world. So think about yourself if you were dropped off somewhere on the other side of the world in this beautiful foreign country. Wouldn't it be much easier and much better for you to navigate and enjoy the resources and the scenery and everything in that country if you had other people along with you who were natives to that country? Aviation is the same sort of way. As you're entering this world as a student pilot, make it a point to network with those around you at various levels. And it's only going to help you and benefit you in the long run. Learn from everyone. Open yourself up to learning from everyone. Open yourself up from being exposed to all kinds of ideas. Good ideas, bad ideas, ideas that you're pretty much indifferent about. But really, you just want to make sure that you're exercising that social muscle as a pilot. This is going to help you in a variety of different ways. Remember, as human beings, we are social creatures. You just want to make sure you find your tribe. That's what's most important when you're socializing, that you're socializing with your tribe. And your tribe is a bunch of aviators, baby. It's people who are 10 toes down in aviation. One time, run that thing. Tip number 18 is also a life tip that transfers over to aviation. Always learn to consistently anticipate. Aviation is all about anticipating. So you can practice this in your each and everyday life as you go out and about and do whatever you're doing, and then transfer that over to aviation. If you're flying along in aviation, of course, no jerking, you letting the plane do the working. Hey, you're not thinking about this moment right here where you are. You're thinking 10, 15 nautical miles down the way, baby. You thought about where you are right now. You thought about that 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago. You know what I mean? You always anticipating. You're remaining ahead of the aircraft. So think about that as you go throughout your life. You're enjoying the moment, but you're always thinking ahead of the moment. And you're always anticipating, what do I need to do? What frequency am I going to be asked to change to next? You know, what heading am I going to have to deviate to next? What's the nearby airport for any type of emergency? Always ahead. Always thinking ahead. Never just so engulfed in the moment, and you definitely don't want to be thinking about the past. Hey, learn from the past, enjoy the moment, but always be thinking ahead and anticipating as a pilot. Tip number 19, baby. Hey, you want to make sure that you always develop good habits from the very beginning. The great thing about being new to something is that you don't have any bad habits yet. You should be taking advantage of that. You should be taking full advantage of the fact that you haven't done anything to develop any bad habits. So you want to make sure that all of your habits going forward are good habits. So that's why you develop good habits, like doing a thorough pre-flight check before every flight. If you ingrain that into your mind at the student pilot level on day one of flying, it's going to be so ingrained in you, then you're likely to stick to it even as your pilot career starts to advance more and more and more. That is a very good habit. So take advantage of the fact that, hey, I'm new. I don't have any bad habits yet. So I'm going to make sure that I develop all good habits from the very beginning. Again, laying down that fundamental foundation. This is an advantage you have, and you should be taking full advantage of being new and not having any bad habits yet. Develop good habits from the beginning. Hey, tip number 20, you want to make sure you keep distractions to a minimum throughout your entire pilot journey. This can be very difficult to do. It's hard to eliminate distractions from your life. Everything can be a distraction at some point in your life, but you want to do everything that you can to limit the distractions in your life. Being a pilot and becoming a pilot isn't something that you can just casually do on the side. It's very difficult to do that because there's so much information you must know. You must remain consistent in your journey. So it takes a tremendous amount of discipline, and you have to eliminate a lot of the distractions. You may have to get ghosted from certain people and just be studying for hours and hours and hours and hours at a time just to get where you want to go. You may go missing in action from some of your friends for weeks and months, and while you're working on things, you may have to disregard other things that you're interested in just to stay 10 toes down. But you do not want to become distracted. So if you have your life right now and you evaluate, you thinking to yourself, I have a lot of distractions. Do your best to eliminate as many of those distractions as possible and have a limited amount of distractions. It's very difficult to have 0 distractions, but you can shorten that list. And that's going to make your pilot journey and the efforts that you put forward a lot more rewarding for you. And it's going to help you along in the process. Do not become distracted. Stay disciplined. And finally, tip number 21, because we grown, baby. We grown men and women. So number 21, we're going to talk about that one. And it's the most important one. Have fun. Remember why you even decided to be a pilot in the first place. Start with tip number 1. What was your why? Whatever your end goal was, whatever your why was, ultimately having fun was somewhere incorporated in that. And you should be enjoying the process and having fun throughout the entire pilot journey that you're embarking on. Never forget to have fun, because the second that you stop having fun, you're going to be likely to quit. It's going to become exceedingly more stressful, and you're not going to be getting out of it what you want to get out of it. The only way you can swing and bang that thing, and we in ground effect, baby, is if you always remain with the mindset of having fun at all costs. This is going to make the good times and the bad times and everything else that you go through so much easier, and everything so much more rewarding. Never forget to have fun. And that is not an option. That's mandatory. And there's 21 grown man tips for some of the best advice ever for all new student pilots. Subscribe to this channel.